Welcome back to the channel. It's Claudia. If you're new here, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Wine, Women, and Words. And in tonight's review, I am going to be sharing points from Annie Dillard's book, The Writing Life. A book about writing by a writer who knows what she's talking about. As a writer, I have found myself in the pages of this book from beginning to end. And I will drink a bit of sangria to that. I am returning to this Wine, Women, and Words on a historic note, a very important tune. I am just now returning to my writing of my latest manuscript. And I have been away on another life sidetrack journey that comes to derail me, however neatly and nicely. But I'm back. And I am back not only to Wine, Women, and Words, but back to reviewing this book because I read it last year and just never got a chance to review it. And back with my writing. Tell me if the universe does not have everything synchronized in this glorious dance of one. Annie Dillard begins this pithy little book. It might be little, but it's pithy and powerful. It is beautifully written in a simple yet elegant way. When you write, you lay out a line of words. And let me tell you, Dillard says you make that path of words boldly and follow it fearfully. That is so beautifully balanced and so utterly true. Because you start out writing, you must write boldly. You can't do anything else but write boldly. Same thing with taking a microphone and standing somewhere and professing to be a singer. You've got to do it boldly. But you follow it up with fear, so you keep doing it anyway. You don't know who will be listening. You don't know who will want to listen. You don't know if you have the chutzpah, skill, and anything else to pursue a career that will give you a professional career in singing. But you pick up that microphone anyway. Well, Dillard says the writing changes. You build walls with the hammer of your words. And let me tell you, simultaneously, you keep writing and then you knock out walls that must be knocked out with the hammer of your words, or your writing will collapse in on itself. Why? Because faulty writing exists in the midst of beautiful writing. And you cannot have the dis-ease of that faulty writing in with the beautiful writing, or else the infrastructure will fall. You must toss the beginning of your work. I tossed the beginning of all of these books. Why? Because what you start to write is never the best of your writing. Good writing is rewriting. If you didn't learn that in high school, I'm telling you now, what you start writing is never what you're going to end up with. There'll be revision after revision after revision. You feel the best part of your writing has to go. When you're writing, it just seems everything you bang out and type out and write out longhand, or however you write, however you get it on the page or recorder, is great, but it isn't. Back again to knocking out walls with the hammer of your words. The writer, Annie says, returns to her work like a painter finishing a masterpiece. And the writer returns again and again. Life, living, will get you off track from your writing. And your writing is an unfinished work until you, like a lover who keeps reeling you back in, returns time and time again to sit down and literally finish the work. It has been the story of my life as a writer. No matter what I was doing, I had to stop at certain places and return again and again. And if you watch my blog channel, Claudia's Universe Blogs, you will see that in action, where I'm talking about a period of not writing physically and a period of returning to the manuscript, literally. A writer has to toss the beginning. One reason is you just must start. And when you start, you dive right into the ocean. Wherever you dive in, you just dive on in. But once you're in there and you're perfecting your stroke and you're swimming, you get better and better as you swim. Same as you get better and better as you write. So the best part of it is always when you're finished and you're able to edit. Because as you're learning and as you're practicing your craft daily, that takes time. And I made notes on the book. So on this one, I made a note of page 9. When you are stuck in a book, when you are well into writing it, as Annie says here, and know what comes next, and yet cannot go on, what? When every morning for a week or a month, you enter its room and turn your back on it, the writing that is, then the trouble is either one of two things. Either the work or the structure has forked, so the narrative or the logic has developed a hairline fracture that will shortly split it up the middle, or you are approaching a fatal mistake. That can happen if you're writing pantster style. What is pantster? A pantster writes by the seat of his or her pants. You sit down, you crank that story out, you have nothing around you as far as research or an extensive outline, and you write it. But sometimes when you write like that, that hairline fracture slips up on you and slaps the living daylight out of you. You've got to sit down and figure out where the structure is going to collapse. And that might mean rewriting everything. Even if you're a plotter and you plot out that novel before you write it, there can still be that hairline fracture. I was right there in the moment of Dillard's telling when she's talking about this. When that happened to me, Toby Adeyemi, a young Nigerian American writer, a beautiful young lady who is writing today, an active writer, and she's an internet writing teacher. And her book, excellent. And she has other books. I met Toby Adeyemi on the internet. And she had an online class that I said, I have got to take this class. Because I felt like I needed to invest in myself and take this class and then restructure my novel. And that is what I did. I rewrote an extensive outline. And that outline is what I write from today. It took me years to rewrite this book, If You Love Me Come. I thought every part of this book was essential. When I finished writing 600, that's what I said, I don't stutter. When I finished writing 600 pages of this manuscript, you couldn't tell me that all of the walls I hammered weren't essential. You couldn't tell me they were non-essential. I loved every word, every chapter. I've even had some people to ask me, what chapters did you throw away? I want to read those chapters. But let me tell you, when you cannot part with what you have written, as Annie Dillard says, you will have a problem. And my problem was, I caught the attention of Marie Dutton Brown. Marie Dutton Brown is a legend in her own retirement. I don't know if Marie Dutton Brown is even still living in 2020. I pray that she is. But Marie Dutton Brown read my manuscript of 600 pages when she was working at the Marie Dutton Brown Literary Agency in New York. And she loved it. She said, if you cut this to 300 pages, I will buy it. I can represent you with 300 pages. But 600 pages, a relatively new writer, although I had been published to that point, she said, I don't know if I'll be able to do that. So cut it. Let me tell you, it took me 12 years. That's right, 12 años. 12 years to cut it. When I could finally bring myself to cut it, guess what happened? Marie Dutton Brown had retired. And the people in her agency knew nothing about the book, had no invested interest, did not have the love that Marie Dutton Brown had for it. Marie loved the southern setting, the characters. She loved everything about the book. So what did I do? I self-published. And that's why this book can be found on Amazon, along with all of the other books that I self-published on Amazon. This restarting is why many experienced writers urge young men and women to find a useful trade. Because I'm telling you, it takes so much out of you to restart and restart and restart a work that you've been working on for a while. Now, some writers can, I've heard, write books over the weekend. Some writers can write books in a month. Some writers have honed their craft to writing books in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But that's not all of us. And that restarting can be very, very painful. But you know what? As Maya Angelou said, and still I rise, and still I write, and still I write. So a book leads its writer. You may wonder how you start, how you catch the first one. What do you use for bait? You have no choice. None whatsoever. I have no choice. One bad winter in the Arctic, and not too long ago, an Algonquin woman and her baby were left alone after everyone else had starved in their winter camp. Ernest Thompson Seton, Annie Dillard says, tells it. The woman walked from the camp where everyone had died and found at a lake a cache. The cache contained one small fishing hook. It was simple to rig a line, but she had no bait and no hope of bait. The baby cried. Simple sentence, subject and verb. The baby cried. She took a knife and cut a strip from her own thigh. She fished with the worm of her own flesh and caught a jackfish. If you indulge in the thinking that your book is magnificent, you will never give it all that it needs. You will never rewrite. If you do, you won't give it your blood, sweat, and tears because you've already judged it as magnificent, and how could it be anything else? If you judge it as an abomination, there's a great chance you'll never finish writing it. And it won't be anything but an abomination because you, the writer, giving it life, breathing into it the breath of life, you, the writer, have already given up on it. Don't fall into those two camps. I love this one. The reason not to perfect a work as it progresses is that concomitantly, original work fashions a form, the true shape of which it discovers only as it proceeds. So the early strokes are useless, however fine their sheen. This is my truth. When I was writing this book, If You Love Me, Come, my friend and author Fiona Zed would frequently tell me, Claudia, have you finished writing your novel yet? And I would always have the answer, no, not yet. She's like, what are you doing? What I was doing was writing and rewriting. I would write a chapter, stop, and rewrite that chapter. Stop, start, stop, start. She said, you must stop that. You must write and just get it out and throw those words across the page, across the screen, and then you rewrite. Appealing workplaces are to be avoided, she says. One wants a room with no view at all, no view. So imagination can meet memory in the dark. Is that not beautiful? What then shall I do this morning? How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. I love that quote. So writers, you must write. You must create. You have no choice once again. What does a schedule do? And I think about Patricia Bright, and I think about Toby Adeyemi when I get to this part. What does a schedule actually do? A schedule, Annie Dillard says, defends from chaos and whim. That is tight, succinct, and absolutely beautiful, because that is exactly what it is, what it does. If you don't write something down, more than likely you will not get to it. Or if you get to it, you won't get to it like you really want to. So the best thing to do is write it down. Why do I mention Patricia Bright? I took Patricia Bright's course, The Break. I took a break from it in the middle of it when I was writing my outline for Toby Adeyemi, and that took me off my YouTube journey. But despite my two journeys of filming, uploading videos, and writing and editing, I still do both. Even if I stop and start, I still do both. But in this notebook from the dollar store, you all know I love the dollar store, I have written my first schedule hour by hour today. And I've had Patricia's course in 2019. But today led me to do this. Why do I mention Toby Adeyemi with a schedule as well? Toby says, write it down. I will write today for 2 hours, for 3 hours, from here to here. When you write it down, you hold yourself accountable to it, for it, and you get it done. It is a net for catching plays. That's what a schedule is for. It is a scaffolding on which a worker starts. It is a lifeboat. That's what a schedule is. As Walter Mosley said, he wrote every day. He might still be writing every day, but he wrote every day in the morning. And then he stopped, had lunch, and took a walk. every morning. My schedule before the pandemic and digital learning days with my grandchildren was to get up and write. Then exercise. Go to the gym and exercise. Come back, prepare dinner, and read, and download, and watch TV. And put your schedule together to film on the weekends for my YouTube channels. And I even abandoned my blog channel, which I'll talk about in another video. I abandoned it because I was like, do I have time to create vlogs and videos and write? I love this quote on page 44. I'm going to go on page 44 and share it with you exactly as Annie wrote it. A writer's childhood may well have been the occasion of his only first-hand experience. Writers read literary biography and surround themselves with other writers, deliberately to enforce in themselves the ludicrous notion that a reasonable option for occupying yourself on the planet until your lifespan plays itself out is sitting in a small room for the duration in the company of pieces of paper. I love sitting in a small room or a large room in the company of books and pieces of paper and a laptop. I love it. I, at one point, lived on a diet of autobiographies. And if I couldn't find an autobiography, I lived on biographies. I do not so much write a book as sit up with it, as with a dying friend. During visiting hours, I enter its room with dread and sympathy for its many, many disorders. I hold its hand and hope it will get better. This tender relationship can change in a twinkling. If you skip a visit or two, a work in progress will turn on you, and you must visit every day thereafter to reassert your mastery over it. Who will teach me to write? Annie Dillard says, a reader once asked her. We're going to skip right on over to page 58. Who will teach me to write? A reader wanted to know. The page, la página, the page, that eternal blankness, the blankness of eternity, which you cover slowly, affirming time's scrawl as a right and your daring as necessity. The page which you cover woodenly, ruining it, but asserting your freedom and power to act, acknowledging that you ruin everything you touch, but touching it nevertheless, because acting is better than being here in mere opacity. The page which you cover slowly with the crabbed thread of your gut. The page in the purity of its possibilities. The page of your death, against which you pit such flawed excellences as you can muster with all your life's strength. That page will teach you to write. There is another way of saying all of this, but I think the way she said it in that beautifully balanced, forever long, mild sentence was perfect. But a writing teacher cannot teach you to write. A writing friend cannot teach you to write. a writing desire that you never sit with and create day after day cannot teach you to write. The actual act of writing and letting that page dance with you teaches you to write. You know what? I think of Toni Morrison here at this part in Dillard's book. Toni said, if a book you want to read doesn't exist, you must write it. If you haven't seen a great book lately that you're inspired to read, sit down and write it. Annie has given us commandments, directives, orders. She says, write as if you were dying. And you are. Technically, not metaphorically. We're all dying. But write as if you knew you were dying. What would you write? If you knew you had 3 months left, what would you write? Write that. Think about it. And then write that. Do not hurry. Do not rush. Find that balance. This is the final quote that I'd like to share with you from Annie Dillard's book. It comes on 78. One of the few things I know about writing is this. Spend it. Shoot it. Spend it all. Play it. Lose it all. Right away. Every time. Do not hoard what seems good for a later place in the book or for another book. Give it. Give it all. Give it now. The impulse to save something good for a better place later is the signal to spend it now. Something more will arise for later. Something better. Those things fill from behind, from beneath, like well water. Similarly, the impulse to keep to yourself what you have learned is not only shameful, it is destructive. Think about that. Anything you do not give freely and abundantly becomes lost to you. You open your safe and find ashes. Think about that. And on that note, I will conclude with whatever you want to do. Do it. Begin today. Begin tomorrow. And spend all of your talent, all of your love. And do not waste time. But don't rush. You've got to complete it. But do not waste time. And I have been writing forever. This is my first book, Dolly. I'll talk about it more later. This is my last book, If You Love Me, Come. And this is a series that I wrote dealing with the character Wanda B. Wonders. Yes, I'm on the cover. Call me Oprah. This is my poetry book, but I've got to order the other volumes of it from Amazon. So perhaps I'll just get on that so that I can share with you all that is here. And I will, I promise. I'll share that in another video. But thank you so much for joining me. And I look forward to seeing you on another Wine